Good evening, listeners. This evening, I would like to take us into the nitty gritty of the current very serious situation in the currencies and the debt situation in the especially advanced countries of the world. There is a very serious problem, as we have been highlighting over the last few weeks, and it is definitely coming to increasing problematic areas with no solution in sight. The United States is a major actor and is not yet providing a decisive blow regarding this financial capitalism crisis. The IMF annual meetings are about to begin, and this week will be a week that any international action that may be taken in concert may be taken, but there is no sign that such an activity or such action is even contemplated. In this series of talks, we have been highlighting the tremendous danger to our countries in this situation. By our countries, we mean, as usual, the South Asian small countries such as Sri Lanka, Maldives, Bangladesh, and the East African countries such as Kenya and Uganda. We face together a situation that is increasingly unstable owing to instability in the international system. For those of you who wish to refresh themselves regarding what we have been saying so far, I do recommend that you take a look at podcasts in my website, Dr. Darin Economics, and take a look at where we have got in our deliberations. We have come a long way from considering simply some tools from the textbooks and the textbook solutions of interest rates, exchange rates, and so on, to a deeper understanding of what is going on in the world. The most critical item, in my view, is that the world financial economy is once again being dominated by what are called swaps. And financial swaps, often called insured, these are just, in a way, figments of the imagination. And they are very, very dangerous, especially with the increase of what in the Far East is called family office investing, or which is generally known as private investment funds. That is, investment funds which may or may not be run by persons with publicly acquired qualifications for running funds, but which are generally very sophisticated and almost always having more than one participant as investor. Sometimes a family fund may be, in fact, over 70 persons who have got together for investment. These are including companies. And while the persons who are running the funds and keeping books are no doubt very professional, it is a matter of some concern because they are outside the normal scheme of things. Now, to call our regulated capital markets the normal scheme of things is in a way a laugh, because in the run-up to the 2008 incident, which was the hallmark incident in financial capitalism and in finance, as taking over from the Keynesian view of the world. The outstanding swaps of the CDS nature, that is credit default swaps, stood at 62 trillion US dollars in 2007-2008. By 2010, after the big sharp drop, the incident of 2008, it dropped to 26.3 trillion, from 62 to 26. And it was not just some knee-jerk response, because in 2012 it was still only 25.5 trillion. So to give some perspective to these amounts, in 2008 all the stock exchanges combined had a wealth of about 22 trillion US dollars. All the mortgages in America came to about 7 trillion. All the US securities, largely held by Americans inside America, was 4.4 trillion. So 62 trillion was surely not a small sideshow, it was the show. At the time the 2008 occurred, it occurred by general recognition that there was some huge outstanding around. The figure of 62 trillion was not known at that time. And in fact, at the time that the meltdown occurred in 2008, it was initially called the $1 trillion meltdown. Within a month of the first book on the subject, it was called the $2 trillion meltdown, and after that they just stopped counting trillions. The actual incident that caused it was the Lehman Brothers crash. Lehman Brothers held only $400 billion of the pile of CDS. There were $600 billion in debt. Now, although these were called insured, $400 billion was beyond the capacity of even the largest insurer in the US, who in fact they had gone to, and therefore they had to appeal to the US Treasury. Now, the US Treasury was unable to overnight solve Lehman Brothers' problems, even though there were attempts to sell Lehman Brothers to South Korean group. There were attempts to somehow get other banks and institutions to hold the Lehman Brothers $400 billion of bad debt. It was then realized that actually everybody was holding some, and the dimension of 62 trillion slowly became evident. In the initial reaction, the US Treasury Secretary, as I have often mentioned, made a mistake. And at the time that he was unable to get sufficient money for Lehman Brothers, he simply let it go. And as he realized that there were many others in that same position, he looked to international friends, and the UK and the EU, led by France, quietly did not provide him with emergency assistance. China did, up to 800 billion. However, by then the problem had become much worse, and he eventually went to Congress for the bailout of the American Wall Street system. This was the almost tragic end of the 1971 system. However, 1971 system was not replaced. We only had further money printing by all the major central banks, followed eventually by all the central banks in the whole world. At the time that the US Treasury went before Congress and got the bailout for the US Wall Street firms, the Dodd-Frank Act was passed. Now, the main requirement there was that customer deposits should not be used in the matter of the CDS system, and further that they must have a separate clearing house. Now, that is the law in the United States, and it is most probably followed. But it is not necessarily followed in the rest of the world. And the problem is really now in what is the EU territories. And let me make this very clear once again. A swap is not a good thing from the point of view of capital markets. A swap means that somebody has something, he exchanges it with another person, and thereby removes it from his books and gets the other person's item, a financial security, onto his books. Why should they do it? It is most probably because the person giving up a security has realized that that may never be fulfilled. It may be default. Now, even when a security is close to default, banks can't be holding it for regulatory reasons. And even countries are doing swaps. Those are currency swaps. There are also interest rate swaps and all kinds of swaps. Now, that whole territory is not regulated finance. And it is so because it is agreed that this territory of swaps is between sophisticated players. And therefore, there is no guarding of the public required. But 2008 very clearly showed that the guarding of the public is required. Now, further, if you look at what is happening as swaps, the Deutsche Bank swaps, which are shown only recently, had what are called private deposit swaps. It is not credit default. And it goes against the very spirit of preventing swaps. So, the danger of the swaps situation should not be underestimated. When the oil and gas industry of Germany was under fire, and it is still so, it was thought initially by the German government that this was a matter of a few billions, and they treated it like that. However, it was much later that they realized that finance is a very difficult subject. Finance continues to multiply. If you start the ball rolling with a deposit or with a loan, you can be certain that the field of finance, the people in that field will want to multiply it. Professor Goldsmith used to say that there is a 1.8 to 1 ratio between what are official, what are normal, and what are definitely standard finance against GDP. So finance is a multiplier. Now, we have come to a stage where finance consists of the creation of very, very almost art form securities. Even humble securities like the LC have been converted into securities who may look the very opposite of what they mean. Now, allowing such securities at the center of the system, which is to have swaps and deposit swaps and openly called default swaps, is surely a very, very dangerous sign. And we are going into a time where these swaps and the institutions handling them, the so-called sophisticated investors, are very many, and their market is in the trillions of US dollars. The ability to prevent another incident such as 2008 is slowly diminishing. As the swaps arrangements increase, And as it is further made cloudy and dark by sophisticated investors forming their investments into a totally unregulated and unseen area. We call it a whale. The whale goes underwater and then nothing is seen or heard about it. And then it will emerge suddenly when it is in trouble. So there are whales, financial whales around. And there are financial swamps whose extent even the best of authorities cannot even estimate. This is a very, very dangerous situation. This is a situation of greatest danger in the EU and in the advanced countries, and next time we will deal with how we in the developing world should react to this. Thank you.